Chicago Blackhawks owner and chairman Rocky Wirtz passed away yesterday at the age of 70. On today's episode, I'll be talking about all the great things that Rocky did for the Blackhawks organization and the legacy that he leaves behind. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Wednesday, July 26th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. As always, go and show me some love on Twitter. Go and follow at JackBushman2, or you could also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And real quick, just a reminder to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. I know well over 50% of the viewers right now on YouTube aren't subscribed to the channel at this point in time. What are you doing? Do me a huge favor. Go and smash that subscribe button for me. It only takes a quick click of the button. It won't cost you anything. And also, that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, good morning, everyone. As always, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your day. And a sad day it is for Chicago Blackhawks fans around the world, as yesterday on July 25th, somewhere around, I believe, 5:30 and 6 p.m. Central Time, news broke that Chicago Blackhawks owner and chairman Rocky Wirtz had suddenly passed away at the age of 70. And Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times was actually the one who I saw break the news. I believe John Dietz was the one that was on it first, but I was driving home from work yesterday. I actually had the GPS pulled up on my car, and I have Ben Pope's push notifications turned on, and I saw that pop up at the top of my screen and just absolutely was shocked, super sad, really, really surprised because, like I said, this was a sudden passing. There wasn't really any news of Rocky dealing with any health concerns or any reports of long-term health problems that he was battling through. So a pretty sudden passing, so it seems, for Rocky Wirtz, and a very sad day for us Chicago Blackhawks fans because Rocky was the one who really saved the Chicago Blackhawks franchise. And I know when he took over in 2007, it was pretty black and white in terms of the changes that he made in comparison to his father, Bill, and the tenure that he led as owner prior to him passing away in 2007. At that point in time, I was only about 9 or 10 years old. So maybe I didn't quite fully comprehend how big the magnitude of the change at the ownership level, the difference between Rocky and Bill Wirtz. I didn't probably quite comprehend how terrible the Bill Wirtz, the dark era of the Chicago Blackhawks was, because I was so young, like many others do. But I'll tell you what, I sure got to feel the effects of the Rocky Wirtz era. And I've said this a couple of times within the past year, as we've now seen Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane depart the Chicago Blackhawks organization. I've said I wouldn't be in this spot right now. I wouldn't be hosting this show. I wouldn't have my love for the Chicago Blackhawks and the passion for the game of hockey if it wasn't for what Patrick Kane and for what Jonathan Toews did out there on the ice, and winning 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years as I'm growing up. And really, that's what got me to fall in love with this team and with the game of hockey. It also wouldn't have been possible without Rocky Wirtz, because while, yeah, I understand there's some people out there who think he might have kind of landed himself in quite a lucky spot with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, 2 guys that would go on to be superstars. Of course, he landed them at the beginning of his tenure, but at the same point in time, he was really the one that branded them to be superstars and push them out there for the hockey world to see, not just the city of Chicago, but hockey fans around the world were able to recognize the Chicago Blackhawks and Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane because they were marketable once again. Rocky Wirtz put them back on TV. I mean, to think about the Chicago Blackhawks not being on television, it is absolutely flabbergasting. And again, this is something that I was too young to truly understand, but I do remember at a young age, my dad grew up playing hockey and he was a big hockey guy, but it wasn't really part of my early life as a child because the Blackhawks were, first off, downright dreadful in the early 2000s. I mean, I believe it was 2004. They were rated the worst franchise in all of professional sports, not just the NHL. But they also didn't have games on television. They didn't have home games on television. Let me change that phrase. And who was going to go and pay money to watch that dreadful Blackhawks team? Who was going to go down and actually watch that? So for Rocky to come in and make that change immediately, right at the beginning of his tenure, to call up WGN or Comcast or whatever was the Blackhawks provider back in those days and say, let's get a deal done yesterday to get this team on television. Obviously, that was kind of a spark that needed to be done and needed to happen in order to revitalize hockey here in the city of Chicago. And he probably also understood the opportunity that he had with Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, and also a young Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith, of course, and Patrick Sharp was there at the time as well. There was a good young core there that was showing some promise, and to market them out to the world for everyone to be able to see was obviously a brilliant choice, a no-brainer choice, to be honest. I mean, not having televised games is an absolute laughable offense by Bill Wirtz. And at the same time, too, who was the man that was willing to open up his pockets and do whatever it took financially to get the job done? That was Rocky Wirtz. Yes, Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews were underpaid for the early portion of their Blackhawks tenure, but when it was time for them to become unrestricted free agents, they got matching 8-year, $84 million deals. By the way, 2 deals that no one had gripes with and were the largest in NHL history at that time. They were the highest paid players in the league. No problem from Rocky Wirtz. He was absolutely willing to open up his pockets for those 2 future Blackhawks legends because of all they had done. He was also the one who gave the A-OK to go and give Marian Hossa that 13-year deal that's now been outlawed. He was willing to break the bank to go and get a franchise-altering type of free agent. When it came time to pay Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith, he was willing to open up his pockets for those guys as well. If anything, the gripe would be that Rocky Wirtz probably overpaid these guys a little bit too much, even though it wasn't his decision, of course. He was willing to shell out any money that it took to get the job done. He just wanted to win, and that certainly would not have been the case under his father, Bill. So to be able to just always put the interest of the Blackhawks fans and the organization and the product out there on the ice at the forefront, that was absolutely massive and crucial towards the Blackhawks dynasty. None of that would have been possible if Rocky Wirtz had just been the same guy that his father, Bill, had been. If he hadn't been willing to shell out that money and hadn't treated superstars so generously. Another thing that obviously Rocky Wirtz should absolutely get credit for is bringing back those Blackhawks icons and past legends that had kind of been shunned from the organization under Bill Wirtz's leadership. Bringing back all those historied members of the organization. Also bringing back Pat Foley to the broadcast booth as well was an absolute marvelous choice. So I know it is a complex legacy a little bit that Rocky Wirtz leaves behind, and I'll be getting into that a little bit more here in just a second, but there's no denying all the amazing things that Rocky Wirtz did that have led to the Blackhawks being a dynasty in that modern day. And as a fan, I couldn't be more grateful that we had an owner like Rocky Wirtz leading us. And I remember, man, thinking back, this is just a memory that came through my head, thinking back to the 2010 Stanley Cup parade, which, funny enough, so what, 2010, I must have been 12, 13 years old at that point in time. 2 million people in the city of Chicago at that first parade. It was an absolute C. Couldn't be more proud to have been in attendance that day. I remember losing my dad. There was just people everywhere, and a 12, 13-year-old me was absolutely panic-stricken. I was lost by myself. I didn't have a cell phone at this point in time. This was 2010. fortunately ended up stumbling into my dad like 10, 15 minutes later. I don't know how that was possible. Anyways, I remember being in the crowd and hearing all the people cheer, Rocky, Rocky, when he went and had his speech, or if he was passing by with the Stanley Cup in his hands. He was absolutely beloved by the Blackhawks faithful everywhere. And I know there are a lot of heavy hearts out there today hearing about the passing of Rocky Wirtz. Um, of course, my thoughts and prayers go out to the entire Wirtz family, to his son Danny, who's the CEO, to his wife Marilyn. Thoughts and prayers go out to them. I'm sure this is a very tough day for the entire Wirtz family and for Blackhawks fans everywhere. We are extremely saddened to hear of this tragic news of the sudden passing of Blackhawks chairman and owner Rocky Wirtz at the age of 70 on Tuesday, July 25th. All right, folks, coming up in just a moment here, I'll dive a little bit more into the legacy that Rocky Wirtz leaves behind. But first, I need to talk to you all about AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. And I gave AG1 a try, and I now drink it literally every single morning. I've been preaching it on the show here for quite a while. I was tired of taking supplements, and I wanted a single solution that supports my entire body and also covers my nutritional bases every single day. And now that I drink AG1 in the morning, it has me ready to go, whether it's before a workout or before I'm coming on here to record a show or just to get my morning started. It really does make me feel unstoppable. I'm ready to go, and I have covered all of my nutritional bases. And thanks to AG1, covering my nutritional basis has never been easier. I just mix one small scoop with water and drink it first thing in the morning. And the best part about it is it'll only cost you $3 per day, which is a cheap and easy way to invest in both your health and your body. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need, then go and try AG1, and you'll also get a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you need to do is go and drink AG1. Go and check out, drinkag1.com/NHL network. Again, go to drinkag1.com/NHL network to check it out right now. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, before I get into segment 2, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to go and hit that subscribe button for me. It won't cost you anything. It only takes a quick click of the button. It helps me out tremendously. I'm really trying to grow the show right now. Super grateful that I've gotten over the 1,000 subscriber hump, but I'm still trying to pump those numbers up. So go and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And also, by subscribing to the channel and also following Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram, you'll enter the giveaway that I'm currently having right here on Locked On Blackhawks. I've recently posted a bunch of pictures on Instagram showing the things that are involved in the giveaway, and the lucky winner will be able to select one item of their choosing. So make sure to go and smash that subscribe button, follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram, and just DM Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram a screenshot that proves you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, and you'll have a chance to win some cool free Blackhawk stuff courtesy of yours truly right here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. All right, picking up where I left off and getting into the legacy of Rocky Wirtz, and obviously it's a little bit complicated considering things didn't end on the most pleasant of terms. Obviously, Rocky was the one that was in charge throughout the Kyle Beach scandal, although one thing I will say is that, and look, you probably feel one way or another about this already. You're not coming to this show to be swayed in one direction or not. But one thing I will say, you can believe this if you want, or if you choose to. Some probably don't. But the Black and Jenner investigation that went down following the Kyle Beach situation found that Rocky Wirtz wasn't aware of any of this at the time that it occurred. Now, again, I'm sure there are people out there who don't believe that. I'm sure there are people out there that do. That's up to you to decide. But I just think it's a little bit unfair on a day like today, after the passing of a father, a husband, an uncle, a grandfather, a husband. I think it's unfair for the narrative around Rocky Wirtz to be the tarnished legacy that he leaves behind. Because first off, again, according to Black and Jenner, it's up to you whether you want to believe it, Rocky wasn't aware of this stuff at the time. Now, the handling of the situation obviously was not ideal, and that outburst at the town hall was absolutely disgraceful. And I was embarrassed to be a Blackhawks fan that day. It was a really tough day to be a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks, and to defend this organization was nearly impossible after that outburst. And after it felt like some progress had been made in like the couple of weeks leading up to that, it felt like the Blackhawks have been dragged right back down in the mud again after those comments that he made following Phil Thompson and Mark Lazarus's questions at that Blackhawks town hall meeting. But I think for that to be kind of the narrative or the theme of Rocky Wirtz's passing is absolutely unacceptable. And some of the comments that I've seen on social media, as they always are pretty disgraceful, because was Rocky a perfect human being? Was his tenure perfect? Absolutely not. But I think as human beings, none of us are perfect, and we all have made mistakes at some point in time in our lives. None of us are perfect. And I think on a day where someone passes away and it was a person who made such a positive impact in so many different ways for this Blackhawks organization that I outlined in segment 1, I mean, making this a first-class organization that people wanted to go to. Fifth Third Arena is absolutely prestigious. Everything that comes with the Chicago Blackhawks, the travel. I mean, the players always talk about how it's a top-notch organization. Obviously, the Blackhawks were always willing to throw out all the money in order to put the best team on the ice possible. They were well above or dealing with salary cap issues every single year. We saw Rocky Wirtz bring back historic icons of the franchise. He also brought back Pat Foley. He put games on television. He was also just kind of like a commoner, despite, having a very lucrative drink company, and, his family being shareholders or owners of the Blackhawks since the 1950s. He never really felt like that. I mean, he was someone who wanted to mingle with Blackhawks fans. And of course, there's those stories of him sitting down in the 100 level. I believe it was section 119. And he'd go out there and just, you just don't see owners do that, especially for an original six franchise in a big market like Chicago. I mean, it makes me think of like the movie Rookie of the Year, where I can't think of the character's name at this point in time, but he wouldn't be caught dead going out there and sitting down with the fans. Obviously, it was a little bit easier because the Blackhawks were in such a glory era, but I thought it was a really cool thing that Rocky Wirtz, despite being the owner and the chairman and a multi-million billionaire, he wanted to go out there and mingle with the fans, and almost wanted to be like a hockey dad and go and sit his chair down in the corner of the ice and go and watch his team out there. A guy that was just held in such high regards by, of course, not only his family, but so many people up and down in the Blackhawks organization talk about how good of a person Rocky Wirtz was. So did he have his faults? Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's super unfair for that to be the topic of the conversation. And I think as humans, and I don't mean to get preachy here, but we're all going to pass at one point in time. There's no guaranteed next day. And again, we've all made mistakes. None of us are perfect, but I think we'd all like to be remembered for our great moments and for all the lives that we impacted when it's all said and done. And I think all of us would be disappointed to hear that after we go, the only thing people will remember us for, despite having a lot of greatness and doing a lot of great things in this world, were the couple of flaws that we had. I just think that's completely unfair and shouldn't be the topic of conversation on a day like today, when Rocky Wirtz touched so many lives and played such a huge impact in my life. And I know many others out there across the world, and so many Blackhawks fans have heavy hearts hearing about this news of the sudden passing of Rocky Wirtz. It's absolutely saddening, and it's a weird feeling that kind of brings you back to reality when someone like this passes. And again, I just think it's okay to feel like Rocky Wirtz wasn't a perfect human being and absolutely had I'm trying to think of the words to put this properly. It was a disgraceful outburst at the town hall. There's no other way to put it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I think it's okay and perfectly understandable to feel that Rocky Wirtz didn't handle that situation greatly whatsoever, and didn't handle the fallout of the Kyle Beach allegations well whatsoever, and to also appreciate him for everything that he did for the Blackhawks organization. I think it's perfectly okay to feel both of those things, and I think that's probably where, again, I'm not trying to be preachy, but as humans, I think that's how we should feel, is that everyone has their flaws. And not everybody was perfect. And absolutely, Rocky Wirtz made mistakes. And I'm not defending him whatsoever for those actions. But I think as humans, again, man, on a tragic day like today, when someone goes, I think we should be remembering people for the great things that they did. And if you want to have conversations when it's an appropriate time about the true diving into Rocky Wirtz's legacy, if you want to go through that tumbleweed, I think then there's a more appropriate time. But today, I want to talk about all the great things that Rocky Wirtz did. I'm not having those conversations because, again, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Rocky Wirtz. I wouldn't be looking at this Blackhawks organization the way that I do. I wouldn't be having this career. It wouldn't be the love of my life if Rocky Wirtz didn't do everything in his power to make the Blackhawks organization world class on the ice, and taking care of his players off of it. I know there are going to be conversations about that with Kyle Beach, but again, according to Block and Jenner, Rocky Wirtz didn't know. You'll believe that if you want to, some won't. But there's no denying that the Chicago Blackhawks wouldn't be what they are today and wouldn't have gone through that modern day dynasty run if it weren't for Rocky Wirtz. There's no other way to put it. It wouldn't have been possible. And I'm so grateful that I got that experience at a young age to watch greatness on the ice and to fall in love with the beautiful game of hockey. It was all possible because of Rocky Wirtz. So one last time, thoughts and prayers go out to the entire Wirtz family. Rocky, thank you for everything that you did. To Danny, it's with a heavy heart that I say I'm so sorry for your loss. To his wife, Marilyn, as well. I know Danny is a listener of the show. I'm so sorry for the loss to the entire Wirtz family. I know there are people out there wondering what's going to come next for the Blackhawks organization now that Rocky has passed. One thing I do want to put out there is that the Wirtz family owns the Blackhawks, not just Rocky Wirtz himself. So the most likely situation, obviously, is that Danny will probably be the one to step in, since he's been the CEO and has kind of been the face of the Blackhawks front office for the last year now. That is the most likely situation, but I wouldn't rule out that they go out and look at outside candidates maybe to come in or have a joint ownership, or we'll see how it goes. And I'm sure we'll know more here in the next couple of weeks. I'll be covering that right here on Locked On Blackhawks. But for Rocky Wirtz, a great man passing. And it's a very sad day for Chicago Blackhawks fans everywhere. Rocky Wirtz, sudden passing at the age of 70 on July 25th. Before I go, I do want to read some comments out there, or some statements that were made within the last day from the Chicago Blackhawks, from Danny Wirtz, and also from Patrick Kane, who posted on Twitter here earlier this morning. From Danny, Rocky's son, his statement read, "Our hearts are very heavy today. Our dad was a passionate businessman, committed to making Chicago a great place to live, work, and visit, but his true love was for his family and close friends. He was a loving father, a devoted husband to Marilyn, a brother, a nephew, an uncle, and doting grandfather to his 6 remarkable grandchildren. His passing leaves a huge hole in the hearts of many, and we will miss him terribly." From Patrick Kane, who posted on social media earlier today, "Not only was Rocky a great man and humble to the core, as I talked about, willing to sit out there with the fans, absolutely humble to the core, he was extremely loyal and generous to everyone, but especially to us players. He always made sure everything was first class for us. That mattered to him, just like winning in his family. My sympathy to his wife, Marilyn, to his son, Danny, and the entire Wirtz and Blackhawks family." And yeah, that just kind of backpacks on what I was talking about earlier. Rocky always made sure everything was first class for his players, to travel and family arrangements, to the practice facility and having world-class staff and trainers, and just everything that goes into the day-to-day life of being a professional hockey player. Rocky Wirtz made sure that that was as world-class as possible for his players. And he just wanted to give the best to everything. And that was always clear that Rocky put his best foot forward in an ownership role. And again, so grateful that he was the owner for the Chicago Blackhawks, because with someone else, who knows if this would have been possible. We needed someone who was absolutely willing to do everything that it took to put the Blackhawks back on the map, to revitalize hockey in Chicago, and to make this team as great as possible. And Rocky Wirtz absolutely did that. So one last time, rest in peace to Rocky Wirtz. I'll always be grateful for everything that you did as the owner and chairman of the Chicago Blackhawks in your tenure. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up Wednesday, July 26th episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. And that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and show me some love on Twitter. Follow at Jack Bushman2, or you could also go and follow at Talkin' Hockey, my strictly Blackhawks account, for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, that's going to do it here for the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.